Jane Mansfield. Jane Mansfield was frequently dismissed as a caricature of a blonde bombshell, regarded as a knockoff of Marilyn Monroe with plenty of curves but lacking seriousness. However, behind the sensational press and trademark squeal stood an individual whose intellect greatly exceeded her silver screen persona. Mansfield claimed an IQ of 163, a figure that generated buzz, although it was never formally authenticated. She was fluent in English, picked up German as a child, and reportedly dabbled in Spanish and Latin. Academically, she studied drama at the University of Texas, and later took classes at UCLA in the early 1950s. While her public image broadcast a studio-crafted sex symbol, Mansfield was discreetly managing her own career. She negotiated her contracts, orchestrated publicity, and had considerable input in her photo shoots, an uncommon degree of authority for women under the rigid studio framework. Some researchers contend that she was highly strategic, deploying her outlandish persona to cloak shrewd professional tactics. She played violin and piano, avidly read, and made appearances at colleges across the nation, occasionally for publicity, yet often unveiling wit and unexpected substance. Tales persist that Mansfield's public facade was all part of a grand plan, a savvy performance that kept the spotlight firmly on her while critics underestimated her. As she allegedly once remarked to reporters, "It's always the men yammering on about dumb blondes. They're the ones who swallow it." Lucille Ball. Lucille Ball's on-screen persona, as the clumsy Lucy Ricardo, made her one of the most beloved faces in 1950s television, but many mistook the character's chaos for the actress's intelligence. In reality, Ball was playing the long game. Behind the scenes, she was a strategic executive and a pioneer in television production. In 1950, she co-founded Desilu Productions with Desi Arnaz, but it was after their split, when she bought out his shares in 1962, that Ball made history as the first woman to lead a major Hollywood studio. That move alone shook the industry. Under her command, the studio greenlit now iconic series like Star Trek and Mission Impossible, both of which had been dismissed by other executives as too niche or too risky. Ball saw potential where others saw failure. Stories swirl that she personally overruled advisors who warned against Star Trek, trusting her instincts over conventional wisdom. Technically, she was ahead of the curve, too. Ball insisted on filming I Love Lucy with a 3-camera setup in front of a live audience, a logistical nightmare at the time, but one that changed sitcom production forever. Her comedic timing wasn't just talent, it was engineered. Crew members have said she treated comedy like math, timing beats, adjusting delivery, and rehearsing slapstick with surgical precision. And while others laughed at Lucy's misadventures, Ball was subtly acquiring syndication rights, a move that helped turn reruns into a billion-dollar business model. Some dismissed her as just another screwball comic. In truth, Lucille Ball was a master tactician who simply let the world underestimate her. W.C. Fields. W.C. Fields amassed wealth by portraying a hapless bumbler, slurring, tripping, and growling his way through roles that painted him as little more than a comical inebriate. Yet the actual William Claude Dukenfield stood miles apart from the dim impression he sold. Beneath that famously abrasive facade was a cutting satirist with considerable intellect and cunning. Fields didn't merely assume the role, he meticulously designed it. His overblown rancor and boozy reputation were the part of a deliberate stage persona, created to handle his discomfort with celebrity and hold fans at a distance. Though he wasn't a heavy drinker in his younger years, he did develop a genuine alcohol problem later on, by which time the public was already conflating the act with his personal reality. Away from the cameras, Fields was an avid reader with an expansive personal library that included works by Voltaire, Dickens, and Twain. Some speculate he even collected rare volumes, though the full breadth of that collection remains a topic of debate among scholars. He also maintained journals brimming with quips, musings, and philosophical reflections, rumored to contain sharp critiques of religion and politics, a far cry from the shallow gags many associated with his name. Fields frequently contributed to the scripts of his films, often employing the tongue-in-cheek alias Mahatma Cain Jeeves. His writing teemed with double entendres, clever wordplay, and pointed commentary on American culture. Comedies such as It's a Gift and The Bank Dick went beyond mere slapstick. They were hidden commentaries on consumerism, conformity, and bureaucracy, concealed under comedic chaos. Studios and censors overlooked the subtext, presuming Fields was too intoxicated, or too dim to pose a threat. In truth, he battled film producers and censorship boards, demanding artistic autonomy and declining to dilute his material. He lost roles because of his resistance, but never sacrificed his edge. W.C. Fields was not the buffoon audience assumed. He was the mind inventing the punchline, ensuring it struck precisely where he intended. Harpo Marx. Harpo Marx mystified audiences by uttering no words, yet dominating every scene. On screen, he was the silent, frantic sibling, reliant on horns and slapstick, casually labeled the dimwit among the Marx brothers. Off-screen, however, he proved to be an entirely different personality. Fluent in Yiddish and Russian, he nurtured a fervent passion for books and, after being discouraged from pursuing music, taught himself the harp by ear. His 1961 autobiography, Harpo Speaks, exposed a thinker captivated by concepts, not merely gags. He once sparred over the chessboard with Samuel Reshevsky, a one-time prodigy and a leading competitor of that era. Some anecdotes even assert that Harpo managed multiple backstage chess matches at once, triumphing in most of them. He corresponded with Salvador Dali, who found Harpo's quirk so intriguing that he sketched a whimsical harp draped in spoons and barbed wire in homage. Although Harpo did indeed cross paths with literary icons like George Bernard Shaw, talk of intense philosophical discussions is largely unconfirmed. Still, the legend thrives, a performer characterized as a mute jester who quietly outfoxed everyone around him. His wit was sharper than his horn, and even more overlooked. Cho Marx. Cho Marx built a career pretending to be a clueless, piano-playing immigrant, but behind the stilted speech and comic timing was a keen, self-taught pianist and a surprisingly astute operator. Born Leonard Marx in 1887, he wasn't Italian at all, but a New Yorker of German-Jewish descent who studied dialects closely enough to convince native speakers. Groucho once joked that Chico could have taught linguistics, though it was likely more admiration than literal truth. Despite never learning to read music, Chico could play by ear with uncanny precision. His brother Harpo wrote that Chico could hear a tune once and replicate it flawlessly, often adding his own comedic twist. On screen, he improvised piano routines that mixed slapstick with classical riffs, a blend that became his signature. Off stage, Chico's intelligence took a different form. While his gambling habit often created financial headaches, he still played a key role in managing the Marx Brothers' touring schedules and negotiating deals, sometimes more by instinct than by bookkeeping. Groucho admitted Chico kept numbers in his head and rarely wrote anything down, though this occasionally backfired. One persistent rumor claims that during the filming of A Night at the Opera in 1935, Chico played chess with MGM's legal team during breaks, allegedly wagering for script changes. Some say he won 11 alterations that way. Whether fact or legend, it speaks to Chico's reputation as a sly negotiator with a gambler's nerve. He may have played the fool, but Cho Marx understood the business, the music, and the performance more than most gave him credit for. The real act wasn't on stage. It was convincing the world he wasn't keen. Gracie Allen. Gracie Allen built a career as a warm-hearted ditz, yet away from the limelight, she was far from naive. From the 1930s through the 1950s, audiences recognized her as the scatterbrained half of the Burns and Allen duo, delivering outlandish one-liners with impeccable timing. Yet those in the industry knew a discerning intellect lurked behind the jokes. Although George Burns took point in crafting their material, Allen actively participated in refining their public image and managing financial matters. Her flair for understanding audience expectations and comedic pacing propelled the duo's enduring popularity in radio, film, and television. In 1940, she unveiled a mock presidential run under the fictional Surprise Party, featuring the quip, "It's time to elect a president who doesn't know what's going on." While crowds roared, political analysts were baffled. Was it mere tomfoolery or a sly critique of politics? She drew impressive turnouts at campaign events and even secured an unexpected share of write-in votes. It's widely rumored that Allen played up her dizzy facade to disarm detractors and stay front and center. George Burns frequently commended her cleverness, once noting she had an innate sense of comedic timing, surpassing many scriptwriters. Her routines are now recognized as pioneering instance of structured absurdity. Gracie Allen spent her career portraying the clueless sidekick, but in truth, she was driving the show. Phyllis Diller. Phyllis Diller earned her keep by portraying a wacky homemaker, yet beyond the stage, she was no simpleton. In the 1950s and 60s, her boisterous cackle, outrageous wigs, and self-mocking jests reinforced the notion of a scatterbrained matron. The reality? She was a thoughtful, strategic talent with a remarkable intelligence. Diller formally studied piano at Chicago's Sherwood Music School and attended Bluffton College in Ohio. Not exactly the background of someone clueless. She diligently composed and categorized tens of thousands of jokes, filing them away in an intricate system she dubbed her gag file. Her comedic topics often lampooned gender roles, aging, and domestic life, couched in absurd setups yet grounded in cultural commentary. Some surmise she amped up her chaotic image on purpose, creating a smokescreen to maneuver through a male-dominated comedy industry without bruising egos. Outside the comedy clubs, she was a passionate painter and even sold some of her artwork. She also wrote several books, including a frank autobiography that shed light on her layered, introspective nature. Accounts suggest she downplayed her intellect to preserve control of her persona, allowing the public to chuckle at the character while the real Diller remained several moves ahead. Lou Costello. Lou Costello established his stardom by portraying a bumbling comic foil, yet those close to him recognized he was far from uninformed. As one half of Abbott and Costello, his on-screen fumbling concealed a keen intellect and financial acumen that quietly revolutionized comedy. While audiences howled at his stuttering puzzlement and routines like the legendary Who's on First, Costello was behind the curtain, co-authoring much of their skits and painstakingly polishing each comedic beat. It's said he would rehearse endlessly just to perfect a single punchline. And in an epic when movie studios maintained a firm grip, Costello insisted on obtaining rights to their scripts and broadcasts, a decision that later won him distinctive residual payments from reruns, well ahead of the royalty era. Some anecdotes claim he was the primary driver of the duo's fiscal strategies, managing their finances with meticulous care. Outside the limelight, he quietly sponsored a children's charity and helped fund a hospital wing in Los Angeles, commemorating his son who passed away in 1943. Though he characterized the clueless character for comic effect, Lou Costello was orchestrating a legacy that eclipsed most of his comedic peers. Dagmar. In the early 1950s, a statuesque blonde known as Dagmar, her real name being Virginia Ruth Egnor, rose to nationwide stardom on NBC's late-night variety program, Broadway Open House. Millions pegged her as the quintessential dumb blonde, wide-eyed, slow-talking, eternally a beat behind. Yet beneath those mannerisms was a savvy mind that understood exactly how to shape public perception. Formerly trained in classical piano and voice at the Pittsburgh Conservatory of Music, Dagmar wasn't merely acting. She was crafting a persona. Some accounts suggest she even spoke Italian, though that claim remains part of her mystique. Her off-the-cuff banter often eclipsed the scripted jokes, prompting producers to give her free rein. Host Jerry Lester of Broadway Open House repeatedly praised her impeccable comedic instinct, noting she could deliver a punchline more effectively than anyone on set. Off-camera, colleagues described her as thoroughly inquisitive, regularly diving into topics like politics and philosophy once the filming stopped. In 1952, she made television history with Dagmar's Canteen, a variety show that doubled as one of the earliest late-night programs helmed by a woman. She welcomed servicemen and intellectuals alike, defying norms without ever shattering her public character. Her impact quietly influenced future portrayals of the dumb blonde, from Carol Wayne to Goldie Hawn. There's speculation Dagmar deliberately leaned into the stereotype to unmask it from within. Misjudged by many, she wasn't just part of the joke, she was the one crafting it. Ann Sothern. Ann Sothern made a career out of playing ditzy secretaries, but off-screen she was calling the shots. While audiences laughed along with Susie McNamara on CBS's Private Secretary from 1953 to 1957, Sothern was discreetly steering her own production company, Anso Productions, into uncharted territory for women in Hollywood. She negotiated partial ownership of her shows, a rare feat at the time, and was among the earliest actresses to secure syndication rights, giving her long-term financial leverage that most of her peers never saw coming. Though often underestimated, Sothern had formal musical training from the University of Washington and built a reputation for keen business instincts. She invested in California real estate and maintained financial independence in an industry that rarely offered it to women. Some accounts propose that she provided informal advice to Lucille Ball during Desilu's early years, though the extent of that influence remains a mystery. What's clear is that while Southern played the fool on screen, behind that facade, she was anything but. George Goebel. George Goebel's gentle, absent-minded TV persona fooled millions into thinking he was just another slow-witted comic. But behind the curtain, Goebel was anything but dim. Rising to fame in the 1950s with The George Goebel Show, he played the hapless everyman so convincingly that many overlooked his keen instincts and quiet ambition. While not the show's sole creator, Goebel was unusually hands-on for a star of his era, shaping its tone and contributing to its scripts, rare in a time when most talent deferred to studio control. Some insiders speculated that Goebel's behind-the-scenes influence was greater than publicly acknowledged, hinting at a performer who understood the power of subtlety both on and off camera. Before television, Goebel had already built a career in radio as a skilled guitarist and entertainer. And during World War II, he served stateside as a flight instructor for B-26 bombers, a role requiring precision, discipline, and technical know-how. While some fans assumed his on-air awkwardness mirrored real life, those close to him knew better. Goebel was calculating in the best way. He understood the psychology of humor and used silence like a scalpel. One oft-repeated story claims Bob Hope once said, Goebel could kill with a whisper, a nod to the surgical precision of his comedic timing. In an industry dominated by big personalities and louder voices, Goebel carved out a space with restraint, wit, and strategic control. The man who made a career pretending not to know what was going on often knew exactly what he was doing. Andy Devine. Andy Devine's unmistakable high-pitched rasp became a staple of classic westerns, often typecasting him as the inept sidekick or comic relief. But while audiences saw a lovable fool, insiders knew better. Born in October of 1905 in Flagstaff, Arizona territory, Devine attended Santa Clara University, where he played football before pivoting to acting. Off-screen, he earned a pilot's license and became deeply involved in aviation, later serving on the California State Aviation Board in the late 1940s. One story claims he leveraged his influence to covertly shape early air safety policies. Financially, he outpaced many of his peers, investing in radio stations and real estate, reportedly building a fortune while Hollywood laughed at his on-screen antics. Though not widely credited, Devine was known to refine his comedic timing and occasionally pitch ideas that enhanced his scenes. Legends tease that his flair for rhythm helped define the blueprint for cowboy comedy in mid-century cinema. Behind the goofy grin was a perceptive operator who knew exactly what he was doing. Ginger Rogers. Ginger Rogers spent countless years captivating viewers with her fancy footwork, yet many regarded her chiefly as Fred Astaire's graceful partner. Even after winning an Academy Award for Best Actress in 1941, she was stereotyped as charming and refined, but hardly cerebral. In truth, Rogers was much more calculating than her critics supposed. She bargained for her own contracts, astutely invested in property, and kept her financial freedom intact long after her movie career waned. Later, she took the helm of various theatrical productions, a subtle announcement of creative authority in a business that rarely entrusted women with power. During the 1950s, she even addressed Congress, voicing unease about labor unions and federal labor policy. Whispers claim she covertly assisted in shaping political speeches, though those accounts remain speculative. What's evident is that Rogers wasn't a passive starlet. She was an astute, methodical architect of her legacy, even as the public underrated her intellect. If you've enjoyed this video, please leave a like and comment. Also consider subscribing and hitting the notification bell to get notified of our new videos each week. Thanks for watching.